85% of children who are in the juvenile system and interfacing with courts in and out of juvenile are functionally illiterate. So there's an undeniable tie between the ability to read and crime.
How willing are you to fight for literacy? How important do you believe literacy is as it affects our community right here in Memphis, Tennessee? Welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. Today we want to welcome from Coaching for Literacy, Ryan Viner. Ryan, good to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Byron. I really appreciate it.
Now, I understand that soccer has been a passion of yours, or you have played soccer. Did you play professionally?
No, I wish that I played professionally, and I don't think you can count the men's league at Mike Rose as professional. Still do that, and played my entire life growing up, and played a little bit at Ole Miss, which is definitely not professional, and I love the game, love watching it.
It's good that you're still engaging and having something, I guess, to help take some of the stress off of the office from time to time. Get out there and run and just sweat it out, I guess.
Yeah, it's nice to engage in it, although the next day when I wake up, I'm much more sore than I used to be.
Does that mean you're getting older?
That means I'm getting a little bit older.
You notice that's one thing about getting older. You notice getting around after a workout sometimes the next day is not as easy. But, as we talk about literacy, Ryan, in really how it affects our community as we opened up our program today, having our students reading on grade level and what the advantages and the impact it can have on our society and right here in Memphis.
Sure. That's a great question. And to answer it, let me ask you a question first. Right now in the United States of America, how many high school graduates do you think are receiving a diploma from our public high school system that are functionally illiterate? So I'll ask that question again. What percentage of American high school graduates are functionally illiterate when they leave their high school?
I have read some stats, and I'm probably off, but I believe I know it's staggering. I believe it's like half.
It's 20%.
Is it 20%?
It's 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5. Oh, my goodness.
These are graduates.
Wow.
So that doesn't count the children that drop out.
And you were talking on a national level, too.
Talking on a national level.
I was thinking more locally.
That's
and
right.
It might be a little higher locally.
Might be a little higher locally.
Yeah.
I would guess that in the city of Memphis, it actually is higher. I don't give statistics that I don't know.
Sure.
References for.
And I was just guessing, too.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we all understand that the city of Memphis, of course, fits in a larger picture, which is the United States of America. And a lot of people, when we tell them that statistic, they're shocked. They exclaim, there's no way that that's happening in America. You give a statistic like that and you think, well, this could be happening in a third world country. Well, it's happening right here. In the city of Memphis, to give you some context, right now, among our third graders, last year the Shelby County Schools distributed a report, and they said that only 33% of our third graders are reading at the proficient level in third grade. And I know that you told me earlier you've got family in Birmingham. And so I want all the listeners to think about family they have, maybe consider a child or a niece or a nephew, grandchild that is around that third grade line. So to the question that you asked, it's crucial that kids are able to read at grade level by the end of third grade. And this is why. Teachers all the way from kindergarten to third grade are teaching our children how to read, because once they get to fourth grade, the curriculum flips, and to be able to learn, it's understood that you already know how to read. So when John shows up to class in fourth grade, the teacher assumes that John knows how to read and is teaching John all sorts of things about science and English and math based off the assumption that John knows how to read. So if a child can't read at the beginning of fourth grade, they're going to have a really hard time learning. Here's another big thing that we know about children not being able to read by the end of third grade, and keep that number about Memphis in mind when I say this. 2 out of 3 children who can't read at grade level by the end of third grade will one day be on welfare or in prison. So the trajectory of an individual life, a community, and our nation is in large part set by grade level reading at the end of third grade. So for us, there is not one more important social issue in America than literacy.
And when you go into the numbers of children in lower income families, and you have some stats on your website I was looking at, by third birthday, a child from a lower income family will have been exposed to, now this is incredible, 30 million less words than a child from an upper to middle income household.
That's right.
And that's crazy.
It doesn't seem right, does it?
It doesn't seem right.
Right. Not only in the sense that it doesn't seem right, it just doesn't seem statistically correct as well.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, how do you come up with numbers like that?
Well, there's a lot of smart people that get the statistics, and we share them. And the way they came up with that number is this idea called the 6,000 hour gap. So if listeners could think about their families and what they do during the summer, I'm thinking about my childhood. During my summers, my parents would take me to the museum, or they would take me to the zoo, or I would be read to every single day, every single night. And so let's consider a child from birth to the end of sixth grade. I would have 6,000 hours more of educational exposure than a child who lived in a lower income area. And from those 6,000 hours, it would be the equivalent of 30 million words. Now, there aren't that many words in the English language unless we keep creating words, which we're really good at as Americans. However, it just means that a child is not exposed to 30 million words, right? Because the child from the upper income situation has read so many more books, heard so many more words, talked so much more with their family, gone to the zoo, gone to the children's museum. And so they do have the exposure to 30 million more words than the child in the lower income situation who doesn't get to do those things.
So, Ryan, why is it my responsibility to be concerned? As a parent who I am taking my child to the museum, I am, giving my child the exposure that they need. Why should I be concerned about these others?
Here's why you should be concerned. I'll say three things, but first I'm going to start with the human aspect. I was reading Harry Potter the other day, and I'm also a huge fan of Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. Think about any book that you've ever read, the value and the worth that you get from turning those pages. Sometimes the favorite moments that you might have in life are reading a book or a poem. Think about the ability that you have to write a friend a letter or to post a status on Facebook or Twitter. If you couldn't read, you could not do any of those things. And so we believe at Coaching for Literacy that literacy is a core component of someone's personal dignity. We also believe that every single person, regardless if they were born in an upper income, middle income, or lower income household, is born with equal dignity and worth. And so because literacy is a part of an individual's dignity, at Coaching for Literacy, we're doing everything that we can to fight to restore people's dignity by helping them have the opportunity to be more literate. So while the majority of folks that could be listening to this program could say that my child doesn't have a problem with literacy, there are millions of Americans, 1 out of 7 American adults who are illiterate. That's 32 million people. And it's incumbent upon us to think about the other that is not able to read and thus doesn't have dignity. They can't read the Bible. They can't read a poem. They can't go and fill out a job application. They can't read a prescription. It's a very big deal.
Well, Ryan, you just gave a good defense on why I need to be concerned about literacy in our community. Can you give us some more examples of, why it's so important for us to be involved?
Sure. I'll give you 3. The first is crime. The second is employment, job opportunities. And the third is the mere finances and economics of literacy versus illiteracy. So number one, crime. Listen to this. 85% of children who are in the juvenile system and interfacing with courts in and out of juvenile are functionally illiterate. So there's an undeniable tie between the ability to read and crime. Now, put yourself in the situation of a child who cannot read, high schooler. Would you feel hopeless? Of course. I was talking with somebody the other day. I asked them, what do you think you want to do with the rest of your life? And they said, I don't know. Maybe I'll work at a fast food restaurant. And for some families, their children would say, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. Because they can read and they know how to learn and they can go to college. They have hope.
Obvious, as you say, crime is the first one. I mean, that's evident. The 6 o'clock news, the newspaper, we see crime all around us. So that's obvious, an obvious reason why people need to be concerned about literacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And a second is employment, right? A lot of times, especially now because it's an election cycle, and it's a dramatic one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of a bit of a soap opera. We hear presidential candidates, governors, senators, everyone talking about creating jobs. How are we going to create more jobs in America? Well, the reality is manufacturing jobs are becoming more or less a thing of the past, or they're being shipped off overseas. And so what you're seeing in the United States is more complex jobs where there is arguably the need that the employee has to be literate. So what happens when we have this large class of illiterate Americans is two things. Number one, those people cannot get jobs. Number two, people that own businesses or are in hiring positions are having difficulties finding people to employ. And they're also finding it difficult to train employees because those employees are not literate. Let me give you an example about this. I was talking with a manager at Chick-fil-A over off Union, and he was telling me about an employee that he had, and he did an unbelievable job working with this employee and making sure that they got training to become more literate. What happened is he hired this employee, and they could not read. And Chick-fil-A does an incredible job saying, my pleasure, and always saying your name. This employee's reading level was so low that they had a really difficult job reading the names on the receipts. And so they couldn't do a core part of their job. And ultimately, the manager had to remove that person from their job, help them to become more literate, and bring them back. Not many companies are going to be able to take the time like Chick-fil-A to do that because not many companies have the core values that Chick-fil-A has. So that is a great example of why number two is so important. Simply put, in America, we're going to have a difficult time producing jobs and having people that are worth employing because they don't know how to read. And I can't sit along and say that's not my fault.
Yeah. And there's another reason too, I believe, that you want to talk about.
Yeah. The third reason is a little bit more complex, and so I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. It's the economics of literacy. So let's consider two different people. We have Ryan, who is illiterate, and we have Sally, who's literate. Well, over 40 years of Ryan's work life, from 20 to 60, Ryan is drawing welfare. Okay, let's say that's $9,000 a year, and he is never going to pay taxes to the government. He's also never going to make an income, and he's not going to really contribute much to the economy by purchasing and things of that nature. Then we have Sally, who from 20 to 60, 40 years, she works $40,000 a year. We've done the math at Coaching for Literacy on just one person being literate versus illiterate. It's $2 million. So when someone's illiterate, what happens is, number one, that person doesn't have dignity. Number two, that person most likely is drawing welfare. Number three, they're not paying taxes. Number four, they could be in prison. So they're a cost to themselves and also to the rest of society, most importantly to themselves. But we have to realize that it costs our society. And it's important that we're honest about that and that we understand it. And the more Sallies that we can have making an income and paying taxes, the better off our country's going to be, because we're in debt. And so we need more people who are literate working, making a salary, contributing to the economy, and paying taxes. Right now, we're just contributing to the own problem that we have of debt by people being illiterate.
Ryan, what's the backstory of Coaching for Literacy? When did it begin, and whose idea was it?
I wish I could say it was my idea. Actually, no, I'm thankful that it's not my idea, because then I can come on the radio and talk about it and be positive for it and really raise the flag. Coaching for Literacy is really simple. What we're doing is two things. We are raising awareness about the problem of illiteracy. And number two, we're generating financial support for literacy work nationwide. And to do those two things, we use the power sports. So at the beginning of our conversation together, we talked about soccer.
Yeah.
A lot of people that are listening to this radio interview, they love the Grizzlies, they love the Tigers, they love the Ole Miss Rebels or the Vanderbilt Commodores. A lot of pastors will talk about how sports need to not be as important in our lives because it's an idol, right? I mean, the truth is that we're really passionate about athletics and our teams. And so what we're doing at Coaching for Literacy is we are grabbing that tool, that microphone that athletics is, and we are using it to shout as loud as we can about the issue of illiteracy. And what we do is we partner with sports teams to raise awareness about this issue, much like the Susan G. Komen Foundation does for breast cancer awareness with the pink color in the NFL, the major leagues.
Really, and coaching a double meaning there too. Using the sports, theme as you mentioned, and also coaching for literacy. Supporting that.
That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so what we see ourselves as, with any good team, any good sports team, you've got to have a quarterback, and you also need to have a receiver. You can't have just quarterbacks. So with this huge problem that is illiteracy, there are a lot of great folks doing wonderful literacy work. Three that come off the top of my head here in Memphis, Tennessee: Arise to Read, we talked about them earlier, Streets Ministries, Memphis Teacher Residency. They all do an incredible work in our city.
Right.
And so what Coaching for Literacy does is we come alongside literacy programs like that nationwide. We have 24 different literacy programs nationwide. And through our programming, where we partner with NCAA teams and NBA teams, and we're looking to partner with NFL teams next year, we give those programs, literacy programs in their cities, awareness that they've never had before, again, because people care so much about sports, and we're able to send financial support to them that they weren't counting on, and we're also able to send volunteers to them that they weren't counting on and didn't even know were there, because all of a sudden the Kansas Jayhawks put out a press release about the United Way of Douglas County in Kansas, or the Memphis Tigers and Josh Pastner are talking about Streets Ministries and Memphis Teacher Residency and how you can get involved.
So is that how the teams are partnering with you guys? What are some of the steps that they're partnering with you guys, these teams?
Right. So teams partner with us through our program called the Assistant Coach Program. And what happens with that program is teams give us a backstage all-access pass for one game with their sports team. So let's say you're a huge Ole Miss fan. Well, actually, let me ask you, are you a big fan of anybody particularly?
University of Memphis Tigers.
Okay,
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers, go.
Yeah.
All right, so Josh Pastor is one of the first supporters of Coaching for Literacy. And what Josh does every single year with Coaching for Literacy is he partners with us in the Assistant Coach Program. And he lets us sell 2 all-access tickets to go into the locker room, talk with him before the game, sit on the bench, receive autographed memorabilia. It is an unbelievable experience. We sell those tickets, and then we take the money that we make and we give it as a donation to our local literacy program partner, which in this case was Streets Ministries and Memphis Teacher Residency. So we do that all over the nation with 18 different NCAA basketball teams, 3 different NCAA football teams, and this year we got our first partnership with the Washington Wizards in the NBA. We're looking to expand into the NFL. So it's an incredible philanthropic approach that adds in a little bit of entrepreneurship, where it's something that people really, really want, which are these all-access backstage passes to their favorite team, And then we're able to take the money that they pay and we're able to give it to a literacy program so that they can help fund and do the boots on the ground work with kids.
When you talk about boots on the ground, are you seeing these professional players and athletes, are they actually getting involved themselves? Are they doing one-on-one time with in these lower income family students and trying to help them get their reading on the grade level? Are you seeing any of that involvement too?
Well,
I'm not saying that's the purpose
Sure.
of it, but I just wondered if that was a byproduct of it.
Yeah, the NBA actually used to have a program that focused on literacy, and they would have a lot of professional basketball players and coaches go and visit schools and read. And that really helps because it really encourages students to see role models reading.
Yeah.
However, what they found is that for children to become more literate, you've had Donna Gaines on with Arise to Read, they need a consistent, ever-present person in their life that on a weekly basis is reading with them.
Yeah.
And professional athletes can't do that.
But that's what our listeners can do. That's
right.
Is that right?
That's right. That's what our listeners can do. And the fun thing about Coaching for Literacy is because we're in an advocacy group and because we're working to get awareness in the sports space with press releases, and the coaches wear our lapel pin on the night of the game and they wear our green wristband. Vanderbilt wore green numbers this year, the game that we partnered with them, and we're trying to get more and more green into that space, like the pink for breast cancer awareness in the NFL.
Yeah.
Is that I can come on the radio here and say, hey, you need to know about this problem. There are great programs here in Memphis like Streets Ministries, Memphis Teacher Residency, and Arise to Read, where if you want to be a part of the solution, you should give them a call and you should volunteer.
And that's one of the reasons, too, you're bringing Hugh Freeze for a special event for you guys coming up on April 4th.
That's right. We're bringing Hugh Freeze to the Halloran Center, and he is going to be a part of our event series that we call Revitalizing Literacy Through Sports. And again, we are shamelessly using the powerful hook of sports to get a lot of people to the Halloran Center to hear Coach Hugh Freeze. And the great thing about this structure is before Coach Freeze gets up, and he is going to do an on-stage interview with a gentleman from CNN named Wayne Drash, who's actually a Memphian as well. We're going to have an education panel, and that education panel is going to be moderated by University of Memphis President David Rudd, and participating in the panel is going to be Elliot Perry and Andre Turner, both former Memphis Tiger basketball players, and both are now literacy activists in the city of Memphis. And so that panel is going to help everyone in the audience understand why they should care about literacy. They're going to educate them about the literacy problem, and then they're going to give them opportunities to be a part of the solution, whether it's by donating or by volunteering or by providing connections and networking so that we can connect this issue to more people that can make a difference.
Okay, how do you get tickets? Who can come?
Well, right now we have about 100 seats left. The Halloran Center has a capacity of 350, and we already have 220 tickets sold, which is wonderful. And the way that you could get tickets and join would be to go to coachingforliteracy.org/event, and you could purchase a ticket there. The tickets are $200 each, and that is a donation to a 501c3. And what we're doing, because Coaching for Literacy is an advocacy group that equips literacy programs in the communities we work in, is we're going to be directing the funds to Memphis Teacher Residency and Streets Ministries to help them do the day-to-day literacy work and training of volunteers and the one-on-one time with children that we've talked about that's so very important.
Ryan, for you personally, I mean, what excites you most as you engage Coaching for Literacy? I know you're the president, and I'm sure it's more than a paycheck. You know, I'm sensing here there's a passion. I'm sensing here that this is something that you personally care about. Why are you so passionate about Coaching for Literacy personally?
Okay, I'll tell you one story. It's actually not about me, and it'll give you a good view of why I care so much about Coaching for Literacy, why I care so much about the cause of literacy, and why I root on so many organizations nationwide and in Memphis that are doing literacy work. Coaching for Literacy actually began because of this story and stories like it. And the beginning of Coaching for Literacy is this. It was actually started by 2 high school students, which is amazing. And they're still on my board. So I work for two college students now. One is named Jonathan Wilfong, and he's at SMU playing basketball. The other is Andrew Renshaw, and he is at Vanderbilt. They both attended Memphis University School. And when they were seniors in class, their teacher, Mr. Reese, he said, hey, you can take the final exam, or you can come up with a community project that would benefit the city of Memphis. So Andrew and Jonathan, being normal high school students, although they are both exceptional, they decided, hey, let's do what we can to get out of this exam. And they thought sincerely about, all right, question, if we were to do something in our community and make an impact, what would it be? And Jonathan kept coming back to this story that he had because of his family. Jonathan's dad, John Wilfong, played at Memphis State, now the University of Memphis, in the 80s.
I remember John. Great player for Memphis.
Yep, he wore really short shorts, and I always get on to him about that. Thank goodness style has changed. John, ever since playing for the Tigers, has been really involved with AAU basketball and coached a lot of teams, been friend and mentor to a lot of young men. When Jonathan was in 7th grade, John was coaching his 7th grade team, and on that team was a boy named Frank Heron. And long story short, the Wilfong family realized that Frank couldn't read. What would happen is they would go to a restaurant and Frank would order what you, Byron, ordered before him, or what I ordered before him. He would never look at a menu, read it, and order what he wanted. He would just get what you got before him. When they would drive him back over to West Memphis, they would pull in through that Wendy's over there with the pilot station, and Frank would never really interface with the menu. He would just say a number. So John told Catherine, I don't think Frank can read. This is a 7th grade boy. So John brought Frank into his office and he said, Frank, I need to ask you an important question. You need to know that I'm going to love you no matter what answer you give me. Can you read? Frank, being a really winsome, sweet kid, didn't want to disappoint. He said, yeah, Coach, I can read. And so John slid him a Sports Illustrated across his desk. He said, I want you to read this paragraph. Frank couldn't read the paragraph. He could only read 3-letter words, conjunctions, articles, that's it. And he would stumble over anything bigger. Well, they went and got him evaluated. Frank was at a 2nd grade reading level at the end of 7th grade. That's abhorrible. And the reality is there's a lot of Franks out there. But what Frank proves is if a child like that growing up in West Memphis is given the same kind of opportunity that children at MUS, PDS, Christian Brothers, the great schools here in Memphis are given, and if they meet that opportunity with hard work, they can be successful.
Wow.
And here's the proof in that. Frank ended up, by 9th grade, and a lot of hard work, he got to a 7th grade reading level. That's a growth in 5 grade levels. It's amazing. He ended up making a 19 on his ACT. He graduated from Central High School. He was a 5-star football recruit, and he was able to accept a scholarship to go to LSU. He is now a junior there. He plays defensive tackle. He's going to be the first person that has ever graduated from college in his family. Now, the big thing about that is statistics tell us that 95% of the time, if someone graduates from college, their family and the generations to come after them will never again live in poverty. So graduating from college is a game changer for an entire family.
We look at menus and we order what we want anytime. We don't even think about it. But I mean, that is a freedom that we share, and not even thinking about. There's folks who can't basically just look at a menu and choose what they want to eat for that meal.
That's right.
And you know, and that right there should just move a lot of our hearts today as we talk about coaching for literacy with Ryan Viner. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your passion for coaching for literacy. Now, there's a website, too, with a lot of information, more information than we've shared today. Folks can go to, what's that address?
Yeah, so that address is coachingforliteracy.org. And the reason that we did share Frank's story is because that is why Coaching for Literacy exists, to help create more stories like Frank's and less alarming statistics like the ones we talked about today. So if someone wants to be a part of that, they can go to coachingforliteracy.org and our contact information is there. You can donate to the cause of literacy, or you can just be in touch.
Few seats still left for Revitalizing Literacy Through Sports, a conversation with Hugh Freeze, and that's going to be April 4th, 6 to 9 at the Halloran Center. That's right next to the Orpheum Memphis. Wonderful facility there. And if you want more information about that, should you go to the website or should you call a number?
You should go to the website as well, www.coachingforliteracy.com/event, and all the information is going to be there. You'll buy the tickets on Ticketmaster. It's very easy, and be able to join us for a really great night in the fight for literacy with Coach Hugh Freeze.
Can you come back sometime?
I'd love to come back.
And maybe bring Frank or some students with you if you want to, or those who are being impacted, maybe volunteers. We could have a room full here and talk about it.
Well, we'll get Frank up here from LSU. And the fun thing is, if you go to our website and you go into the homepage, you can click on a banner. There was an incredible article that Sports Illustrated did on Coaching for Literacy and Frank's story with Jonathan and Andrew Renshaw, and why Coaching for Literacy is doing what it's doing. So I encourage your listeners to check that out.
Hey, Ryan, thank you so much for what you're doing for literacy and coaching for literacy right here in our city, and as it's impacting not only Memphis students, but students all around the country.
All right, thanks for having me, Byron. Really appreciate it.
Friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.